Welcome to For the Record, an unfiltered view on current trends and timeless advice for surviving in the aesthetics industry. Whether you're an injector, practice owner, sales rep, or marketer, it's time to set the record straight. Each week, we cut through the chaos and showcase diverse perspectives and winning ideas from the best minds in the industry. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Hall, Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record. Now, let's get started on this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of For the Record. And we took the week off last week in preparation for two guests this week, two awesome guests. I'm so excited that they're on our show. We have with us today Jessica and Ken Harper, who are the owners of DrippyNurseJess Med Boutique in Gilroy, California. And they are, goals. There are a couple goals. They have been to so many conferences this year. They have been all across the country, really sharing their excitement, their love, and their just enjoyment with aesthetics and their passion for growing a great business that is affordable, that is accessible, that really is doing things differently in Gilroy and making aesthetics really for the masses and to make sure that patients feel accepted, they feel excited to be in part of her practice. She comes from a long history of plastic surgery, training, learning, doing her own learning right now as a student, going back to school. And with her to help her along the way is Ken, who is a digital marketing expert, a tech guy, and really her ride or die, I think, if I'm being honest. They are a great couple who is doing really cool things, and they are here with us today on the show, and I could not be more excited. So Ken and Jessica, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having us, Dr. Tiffany Hall. We appreciate it.
I love you guys. We fell in love with you. Our whole team did early on. We're like, we don't know who those people are, but we like them. They're fun. And then I met you, and I was like, oh, you guys really are all the things. You're the bee's knees. We were at Reveness, I think, in March of this year. And Ken just walks in up like, hey, I don't know you, Arkansas girl, but let's be friends. And from there, just our friendship has blossomed. So I think you've had the impact on lots of folks in the industry, and you've kind of really been everywhere this year. So let's kind of take it back and start from how in the heck did you even get to aesthetics by way of plastic surgery and all of your nursing career prior to coming into our world?
So it all started during the tail end of the pandemic. All my coworkers were burnt out. I was burnt out. And I knew something had to change. There was no way I was going to keep doing this for the next 20 years. So I started seeing nurses doing IV therapy, mobile IV therapy. And I was like, I need to get into that. So I applied for a very popular company and I got the job right away. Next thing I knew, I had two full-time jobs. I was working in surgery and I was a mobile IV nurse. And from there, I kind of learned the ropes. I kind of learned what I needed to start my own business. And that's how DrippyNurseJess was born.
Well, I just love the name DrippyNurseJess. Is that a Ken thing? Ken, did you come up with that?
That's definitely a Ken thing for sure.
Well, yeah. With the whole IV idea, it makes sense, right? And I think you were at the time of COVID when everyone hated their lives. They were like, this is, we're stuck at home or we're in the hospital. And it was a very trying time. It's like, at what point were you like, you know what? I've made enough money now in my second job that I can say adios to hospital life and to surgery life and do this full time. Because I think it's a hard place to be, is to know when is it like the right time to say I can financially make this move.
It took me a while. Once I got into the IV industry, I wanted more. I wanted to learn aesthetics. So the money I was making from the IV industry kind of funded my training for aesthetics. So I got into aesthetics. I did, the basic Botox and filler course that everyone does. And I walked out of there knowing even less. I was confused. So I found a mentor, and it was someone I worked with in the hospital system, a nurse anesthetist. And she was awesome. She trained me. And then from there, I started dabbling into Botox. I started getting a lot of clientele very quickly. So I knew I needed more training. Looking into conferences, and I think our first conference was Reveness in September of 2023. My rep invited us there. We actually made a huge purchase to get there, but it took me about a good year and a half before I backed off of the hospital system.
But real quick, doctor, I'll jump in and just back the story up a little bit and give you a little more context, right? My wife is super modest. This all started, like she said, during COVID. She was burnt the hell out. Okay. We live in Silicon Valley. We were ground zero. And I say we, it was her, right? She works at Kaiser. So she was dealing with, everything, the N500 mask, just a whole lot. If we all remember the pandemic when it first started, like it hit here first and she was right in the middle of it. And then from there, she started just exploring other opportunities, found the mobile IV therapy industry. And from day one, I told her, I was like, you know what would stop you from just doing this on your own, right? Like, why do you have to be attached to a company? And we've always, we've been at it for a while. I've worked in corporate America for over 20 years now. So it's always been in the back of our mind to be independent and to find something that can be ours, right? So it was always just like, well, what is that something going to be? So she literally tripped, fell, and stumbled into the mobile IV therapy world. And again, from day one, it was just like, you know what? You should do this yourself. I'm a marketer. I've been in marketing and advertising again forever. So I'm always thinking branding. So again, from day one, I noticed in the industry, everybody was IV nurse Tiffany, IV nurse Jill, IV nurse. And so it was just very bland, very just cookie cutter. And it seemed like no one was willing to take a risk. So I told her from day one, we're not going to sell IV therapy. Okay. We're going to do two things. We're going to sell your story and we're going to build a brand. So we're going to begin with the end in mind. So everything that we've done has been intentional. Some of it has worked, some of it hasn't worked. So the name Drippy Nurse Jess, I put a lot of thought into that, right? It sounds crazy, but I actually did put a lot of thought into that. I won't go too in depth into like the story, but it means something, right? It represents her brand. It represents our family brand. And then it's a play on words, right? With IV drips. And guess what? There's nobody else in the industry that has a name remotely close to it. So I knew if nothing else, people would remember the brand name. Right. And that's how we went into it. And then she can kind of tell how she got into injecting and we met everybody at the Reminisce retreat and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I will say though, before you go into that, the Drippy Nurse Jess thing, when I met you, Ken, you're like, oh yeah, my wife is Drippy Nurse Jess. Like she didn't have a name. She had a brand. And I think as we've looked at like pop culture, everyone talks about their drip all the time. Like I got my drip. It now fits. It's like a play on words of so many things. Like I think about it. I never thought about it being an IV, to be honest. It never even occurred to me. I thought it was more of like she's got swagger. I thought it was like meaning like the drip kind of thing. So I think it works in both ways.
That's what it was.
But what you said with the end in mind, I look at your website, Jessica, it's gorgeous. You have marketing that looks like you've been doing this for, decades. You're already playing how you want to win. Like it's not practice for you, right? You're playing like you're in the game already. And I think you've gone from starting out in COVID to like having an established brand that people know and like industry, we all know you. And it's because you've done things like that, like having a really cool name, been unique, thought about the strategic part of branding. So there is something to be said for that. No matter how good of an injector you are, if you don't do that right, it won't matter. No one will be able to find you. And so I think there's kudos to having Ken on the team. If you've got great talent and a great marketer, you can do a lot of things in this world. So it works out. But anyway, carry on.
You hit the nail right on the head. We're a team. We're definitely a team. I'm a talker. The conferences and everything that Jessica's doing now. I did all of that years ago, right? I've been on stage, I've spoken at conferences and so on and so forth. So coming into this, I had a bit of an advantage, right? Because I had nothing to lose. Right. I'm a guest in the industry where she's the actual injector. Right. So, I've always been the conversation starter, but the substance of the conversation comes from her. Right. Like I'm not an injector. I don't even like needles. So I'm scared as hell of needles. But, just like the experience with you. Right. I thank you for remembering it, too. I just literally walked up to you and said, hey, my wife is Drippy Nurse Jess. She would love to talk to you. And that was just kind of our routine, and that's how it's been. But nonetheless, back to the story.
You're in the IV world, but you come from surgery. How does all that culminate? Because I feel like you have a unique experience that others don't. I think if you've ever been into an OR and seen someone in plastic surgery, just in an OR in general, period, to see what it really takes, the non-surgical makes so much more sense if you can see the surgical. So give us an idea of like what that experience meant for you and how it's helped you to really shape what you do now as an injector.
So I was the plastic service lead for about 5 years at one of the top hospitals in the Bay Area. And we worked more on reconstructive surgery. And so I've always loved plastics. I've always loved aesthetics. I've never been an aesthetics girly. I used to not take care of my skin, go to sleep in makeup. But I've always had this desire to know more of it. So when I was offered the plastic service lead position, I took it and I ran with it. Once COVID hit, everyone was burnt out. I took the IV nurse position and made enough money to start getting my training in aesthetics. I was like, yeah, I could do this. I could totally do this. Like he was saying, why don't you start this on your own? I was traveling in some instances all the way to San Francisco to give IVs. And I knew that this service was needed in Gilroy, which is about an hour and a half south of San Francisco. So once we started the business, we marketed out to the Gilroy community. And lo and behold, news just spread like wildfire. And I got super busy with IVs.
In my perspective, and obviously I'm a bit biased, I know she would come home a lot of times and give her opinion. I won't say complain, but give her opinion about surgeons and their bedside manner and just their overall demeanor and having a God complex and just not being very nice to patients or nurses and anyone in the surge operating room, OR. So I feel like that has given her an extreme advantage currently because she creates an experience, right? And to the point where she gets nervous, feeling that she's not making people feel comfortable, right? One of the things that sets her apart that, I'm learning now is being pushed in the industry, but she has been doing it from day one. Somebody will come in and get tox or get their lips done or whatever. And, 24 hours later, 48 hours later, they're getting a text directly from her. Right. And I would tell her like, hey, you shouldn't give people that kind of access to you. Right. And she's like, no, I want to make sure that they're OK. And when you look at her Google reviews and the reviews on the website, like those are the things that stand out. Right. And that's what people love and appreciate about the experience when they come here. And I personally know that that comes directly from her experience in the OR and seeing people do it the wrong way. And now she cares about doing it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. But also to answer your question, being in the OR and seeing the different layers of the skin and the tissue, that has definitely helped me be a better injector because I know the planes. I know it because I've seen it. And so I think every injector should get some time in the OR to have that experience.
I agree. I think they should all go spend ample time there to see it firsthand, learn what they're looking at below the surface. I think we don't do it nearly enough because there is no like aesthetics specialty, as we all know. It's not like a thing, but it should be a thing. But thinking back through your IV, so you're in Gilroy, you're finding some success. When did you decide to open up a brick and mortar? I think that's a big leap to go from a concierge IV to now saying I'm going to have 4 walls and a door with my name on it. I'm going to pay rent and do the whole thing. What was that transition like? And when did you decide that was like the next step?
So when I was doing the mobile IV, I was going from town to town. There's Gilroy, then there's like Morgan Hill, which is 20 minutes north, and there's Hollister, 20 minutes south. I was only able to take 3 or 4 people a day because I was spending all my time driving. So that's when I decided to rent a little booth or a curtain room at a local salon. And I was there for about, 6 months maybe. And I outgrew that. I started doing microneedling, Botox, filler, and I outgrew it. And that's when we rented a bigger space, which we're in here now. And we've been here for about a year.
I got to tell you, Doc, that was scary as hell. I never even told her, but, she was in the back of a beauty bar or a salon, right? Just a little small space with like these curtains. And, if I did this, I was in the hallway, right? Like I'm bursting through the little space that she had. but it was crazy to me how just nonstop. And we rapidly just realized like, yeah, this doesn't work. This space is too small for you. And, that's how you're doing the right thing in life, right? Because when you're forced to take on things that scare you, but everything just starts falling into place, right? So the gentleman who owns the complex where we lease this, actually, we know him for many years. We used to do CrossFit together. We were involved in Pop Warner Youth Sports. So we tripped, fell, and stumbled into this space. When he told us the price, I was like, holy smokes, that's, 2 vehicle car notes. Can we really take on this expense? And, this experience has been a test in committing to believing in yourself and truly having faith in the unknown. And, there's no wood to knock on, but knock on wood, she hasn't slowed down. And it's worked out. And again, she went from being in a curtain room to now being here to, as we speak, we have a med spa next door being built out.
Well, it's impressive. And I think, you mentioned Jessica early on that, well, and Ken as well, about what you saw in the OR, the bedside manner, just the way people are being treated. Think about that now with your space today. How much of that factors into how you've grown? I think you have a very specific idea of how you want patients to feel, how you want them to, to walk away feeling like they've been invested in by you, and, whether that's emotionally with your talent, branding, everything. How do you shape a med spa to feel like that? And how do you think through that as you're growing now to the second location that's bigger, bigger, bigger? How do you keep that same vibe as you get bigger?
I think first and foremost, I have to have a trust with my clientele. My clientele can relate to me. I'm a mom. I'm 40 something years old, and I'm as real as it can get. All this hair and makeup, that's usually not me. Women can relate to me and they feel like they know me. I'm always on Instagram doing funny reels or just telling my business. I remember Ken sometimes used to tell me, God, why do you have to tell all your business? But that's how I build my clientele. I'm purely based off of word of mouth and referrals. My goal when we move into the new med spa is to continue that experience with my clients. They're going to continue to trust me. They're going to continue to relate to me. It's going to be the same as where we're at now. It's just a little bit bigger and a little bit nicer, but it's still going to be drippy.
Yeah.
Well, and you have one injector now besides yourself, I think, if I read that correctly. Are you going to add more? Because I think that's the challenge. And Ken, you probably know this from corporate America. The minute the team starts to grow, it goes to hell in a handbasket because it's hard to duplicate the magic. I mean, it truly, even here at AR, I mean, as we grow every day, it's like we have to keep reinforcing core values, reinforcing processes and systems, automations, because it starts to get too far away from the nucleus. But if you're hiring more people, how do you think through that, from a training perspective? I wish I could find the magic answer for this of how you beat into someone else's head your vision, make them be you and think like you. How do you get that done?
Well, I'm the only injector right now. I do have another nurse. She's my IV nurse, and I just trained her on microneedling and chemical peels. So I am approaching that training very cautiously. Again, I'm still learning how to do things, so I haven't taught her yet. We're starting slow. We're just, taking it day by day. As you know, Yvonne Delos is my business mentor, so she helps me a lot with that. We take things step by step, and when the time comes to train her, we'll figure that out.
To piggyback off of that, because you're bringing up a great point, Doc, and it's something that her and I have been talking about as well. The goal is to grow, but I've seen it time and time again, right? Scale can ultimately be to your detriment because oftentimes in businesses, when you scale and when you grow, you stop doing the things that originally brought you the success. So what we plan on doing and what we constantly are doing is keeping our story and our brand at the forefront of our mind, right? So that leads to the next step. Hiring is essential. Paying attention to your hiring process, the questions that you ask, where you're sourcing your people from. If you know who you are and you know your brand identity, then it's less challenging to find people that fit into that during the hiring process. So like everything for us revolves around staying on brand and staying true to the brand. And then from there, you just scale it out with the right team and the right people.
I couldn't agree more. I think too, even here, people want compromises. They're like, well, but I want to leave at this time every day. I want to do this thing different. I'm like, I can't compromise for you. I have 60 other employees who have a set of rules and a belief system and a value system that we all subscribe to. If I change it for you, it's going to now throw everything off. And so I think we find that here. It's like a really great talent. I mean, you find this like diamond in the rough, like, oh, they're so great, but then they say, I want everything to be different from me. I'm like, well, then you can't be here. And I think if in the interview process you're very upfront about that, Ken, to what you just said, it's known. Like this is how we play. This is what we're going to be doing here. And if it's not for you, that's okay. But if it is for you, we're going to go all in with you. And so I think people make that mistake in the beginning of saying, but they were a really great front desk person. They were going to be amazing. Like, yeah, but they were going to wreck all you've built over time with encroaching on your value system. And so that's a lesson in scale that people don't learn until it's a little bit too late. And then it's hard to walk it back because you're too far gone at that point. But in all of that, Jessica, I love that you're a humble queen saying like, I don't know it all yet, so I can't train everybody else quite yet. You mentioned Yvonne there. And to the point of, you're training and learning yourself. You've traveled all across the country, both of you. You've gone to conferences everywhere. I've seen you all over. I've been with you, many of them. I want to know what you think we're doing as an industry to help people like you to learn and grow quickly and get up to speed. What grade do you give us as an industry? How are we doing according to the Harpers?
I would say a 7.
Okay.
I think there needs to be a little more unbiased training. I get offered a lot of trainings, but they're with the companies that make the product. And if they're not with those companies, the trainings are super expensive. So it's really hard to get a lot of training. And it's not easy out there for new injectors. But I would definitely say unbiased training. A lot of times I go to these conferences and I'm a little lost. There's different tracks. There's the business track, the injector track, or a esthetician track. And I can't be at all of them at once. So I have to pick and choose. And I feel like not only do I need to learn more about injecting, but I also need to learn more about business because I kind of went in it all at once, right? Like I wasn't an injector and then I started my own business. I did both at the same time. So I feel like it's been double the difficulty for me than it would be for an injector who breaks off from her boss and then starts her own business.
I think that's a common theme, though. I think that's so. Look at Aesthetic Next. Like you mentioned, just our conference. You have business, you have clinical, you have esthetician, and you have all these like virtual options to watch everything when you get home. But that's really hard too, right? You're busy. But I think what you just mentioned is the number one problem that we have in the industry right now. It's like, where do you spend your time? Learning to be a great injector, because you have to have that, right? That's a non-negotiable. Or learning to run a great business, because if you don't have a business, it doesn't matter if you're a good injector or not. Like it's doing two things at the same time without any plan or knowledge of where to go get what you need to be successful at both of them. It's impossible. I think we've done a great disservice to our industry to say, and in your case, it was different. You were coming from a different area, in surgery, coming into aesthetics. But all these injectors who are like, I can run my own business now, I'm good. Running a business is freaking hard. It's really hard. Much less becoming a great injector too. Like it's just a lot of work. So how do you guys balance that out, Ken? Like, are you doing some of the business part, and Jessica, you're doing all the injector part, or are you sharing responsibility? Because I think that you guys are such a great team. How do you share that load?
Yeah. So to back up, I did want to just give my opinion on how do I rate the industry, because I'm a guest here and I'm coming from the outside looking in. I actually feel a little different than Jessica. I give the industry, on a scale of 1 to 10, I give you guys like a 15. Okay. I think it's awesome. I love the conferences. I think anytime you create a situation where you have options and then you can decide, I think that's a good thing, right? So going to a conference and being able to, and this kind of answers the question that you're asking, right? This has been our approach. When we go to a conference, again, I hate needles. I don't inject. She is a student. She's there to learn. I want to socialize, meet cool people, and go hang out at the bar and film some content. So, usually we'll split it up and she's in there learning, and getting all of the hands-on knowledge. And I'll pop into a business conference and then I'll share my notes with her. Or she'll see like, hey, this is, there's a speaker here. I really want to learn about this element of business. And she'll go to that one. So from that standpoint, I think it's awesome. Another reason why I give the industry such a high rating, I'm a bit biased, right? Because we've been extremely fortunate to establish relationships with, some of the top people in the industry. So, she's able to pick up the phone and call people and text people and get advice from, again, some of the biggest in the space. And candidly, that's not common, right? Like, I worked at Google. I can't call or text, Mark Zuckerberg or anybody like that. And, hey, I'm locked out of my Gmail or, unblock my Facebook account. That just doesn't happen. So to see it in this space, especially a space where the misconception is, hey, everybody there is plastic. They're so superficial. Everybody is fake. For us to come in as unknowns, not really looking the part and to be embraced the way that we have been. I kudos and shout out to the aesthetic world.
But I think we made that happen.
That is true.
We literally forced our way into the industry by going to 6 conferences in 12 months. And, I remember the first conference we went to, Reverend S, I saw Yvonne Delos on stage and I was starstruck. And I told him, I'm like, oh my God, I follow her on Instagram. I make sure you get a picture of us after. And after the conference, he kind of shoved me into her space and I introduced myself and it just kind of took off from there. I feel like, if you want to get in the industry, you want to have people that you can call, pick up the phone and be like, hey, oh my God, I injected this person and this happened. What do I do? You have to put yourself out there.
Can't be scared.
I could not agree with that more. I think even our little show notes I put, if you want to be seen, be in the room. I think there is a misconception about people who do good work, that they'll get found and they'll get discovered and they'll get put on a podium. That's not real. No one knows who you are in your small town and wherever you live. You guys obviously it's a bit different. You're in the Bay Area, but being great at your job is not enough to be on a podium or to be recognized or to be known. You've got to get your butt in front of people who matter to discover you and to help open doors for you. And I think the fact that, Ken, you're so charismatic and you will push Jessica in front of people like, go get your picture made. I think it does help, but you got to have somebody there who's in your corner, who is an extrovert saying, go do that. And then if you're a great injector to back it up, it's really helpful. If you're not, different story. But you guys were at places that were strategic in nature. You were in the right rooms with the right people, and you were making things happen. You were fun. You were engaging. You were, talking to people. You didn't just show up to the conference. You engaged and attended and were part of the conference. I think there's a big difference there too. And if you're going to spend the money to go and not do that, what's the point? Like, learning cool stuff is not enough. You got to go maximize opportunity to network and to build relationships, because when you come back home, that's how you get to do cool things and to make friends, have an adverse event hotline, and have you on with your business. You gotta make moves, right? You gotta do it for yourself. You gotta make your own plays. And I think you guys have done such a phenomenal job. You're a prime example of that, literally like living itself out. You have done such a great job of making the right connection. So I applaud you both for spending time and money. I'm sure a ton of money away from your kids, away from your family, to go to all these things, but it has, I think, paid off in dividends. I really do.
Thank you. Absolutely. And it's been an investment for sure. We live a similar life, right? I was looking at your Instagram story the other day, this weekend, and I saw your son, you're at a hockey game with him, right? And we had just gotten back from our son's basketball game. It's expensive being a parent, right? And it's even more expensive, trying to get established in the aesthetic world. But if you really want it, you have to make the sacrifices. And again, this last year for us, it was strategic. We would sit down and talk about it. And, on the flight back, she's crunching numbers like, oh my gosh, there's another conference in 2 months. Should we do it? Shit, I just spent a couple of thousand. And we would go through it and look and say, all right, well, who's going to be there? Well, such and such is going to be there. This one, okay, well, we know this one. We like her. We like him. Well, if nothing else, it'll be fun. And we would go and then she would look and say, well, this one's speaking, so it's fun and I can learn. And we would go. And again, we've been extremely blessed and fortunate to be embraced the way that we have over the last year. But yeah, it was expensive as hell.
Yeah.
Well, and Jessica, you mentioned in your initial sort of form about just acceptance and Ken, you just mentioned we didn't look the part. I think you guys for sure looked the part, by the way, but that's kind of part of your magic too, is that you are sort of a person who's I don't know if I should be here or not, but I'm here. So while I'm here, I might as well be great at what I'm doing. But explain that to me with how you built your clientele, your med spa, everything that you're doing, because I feel like you have this, I don't share that vision of you. You have that vision of you, how you think that that's in a client's mind, how they're feeling as well. Because I think clients often do feel like they don't belong or that they don't have the right look or they shouldn't be coming in for lip filler yet, or they're scared to walk in the front door of med spa because if they're going to judge me about how I look or how I feel. How are you fixing that problem? Because I feel like you've got such a personal connection to it that it probably is living out in your everyday life at the med spa.
I've actually lost 120 pounds over the last 20 years. Combined, I think we've lost probably 300, 350 total. With hard work, diet, exercise, tears, it makes me more empathetic to my clients. I know what they're going through. I keep it real with everyone. I tell them, yeah, I used to be a big girl. I got made fun of. I wasn't accepted. I couldn't sit at the table with the girls in pink, so.
Yeah, there's always an element of imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
And she experiences that all the time, right? Even preparing for this interview, right? She was blowing you up. Oh, I need the questions. I can't do this. I got a text literally 2 minutes before I walked in here saying, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I'm so nervous. Right. I forget what conference we were at, and she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I can't believe I'm here, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, Jessica, cut it out. Look around this room. The biggest people in here know you. You've gotten drunk with Yvonne. You've danced at a club with Shino Bay. Right? Cut it out. You're okay. They accept you. But I do think the fact that she always maintains that element of not getting the big head, right? I think that helps her stay genuine and true to herself. Okay. And then bringing it back here locally, it's awesome for me to see her in this space, right? Because when we're out there on the national level with you guys, she's so quiet and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here. I can't believe I'm in this room with all of these giants. But here in town, in this office, she's big shit, right? She's wheeling and dealing and she's telling people, and, it's the complete opposite of what you guys see at the conferences, right? Her personality comes out and she's leading. So she takes a lot of what she sees and learns from everyone on the national level and then brings it here locally and shares it with the clients. And I'm just I'm blown away. And I tell her, I'm like, if you could do that here on the local level, then you should have that same level of confidence when you're out there with Dr. Hall or with Yvonne or with, whoever.
Well, we did 3 drinks in at Aesthetic Next. We were having a good old time, Ken. We were tossing back drinks and having fun. So
it's so hard for me to call you Dr. Hall too.
You don't have to. You can just call me Tiffany. Well, Jess, you're going to have to put on that big booming voice and big exciting extrovert because you're going to speak at Yvonne's conference, I think, at MAI. Give us an idea of what that's going to be like. So if you are an introvert, I know firsthand, having worked with many speakers, that's a big transition to go from even a one-on-one training to now being on stage, which, by the way, I love it. And I'm happy to give you all the tips and tricks. But it is a big difference. But what is the message that you want to send? Because you, again, have been doing this now for a bit. You've kind of been through the trenches of conferences. You've open now. This is going to be location 3 very soon, in your iteration. What do you want people to know who are in that audience that you didn't know or that you wish would have told you to make it easier, faster, better in your journey to the come up?
My audience is going to be, of course, new injectors, new business owners. I want them to know that it's definitely not easy, but it's something they can do if they are in the right space. Have someone who's their ride or die that can come with them to the conferences. I think that'll be what I want to express to people when I am on stage. I still have a lot to learn. Hopefully, Yvonne can guide me through what I need to do to get there. But I'm still working on it. I lean on him a lot to help me. And so we'll see what happens.
Well, the first big podium, I can tell you, practice a lot so that when you get on stage and your brain is a big scrambled egg, your body will just know what to do. It'll just kick into high gear and it will say the talk that you've been practicing without you having to even think about it. It's like a robo talk. The first few times I ever did a talk, I did that. I was like, if my brain's so wired, what I have to say next, if I forget everything on stage, just like when you're a dancer, your feet just know the moves, your brain just knows what to say. So a little cheat sheet for you, but I think you'll be great. And I think Yvonne is such an amazing coach. I mean, shout out to Yvonne. I just think the world of her. She's just a precious human, but she is so good at that too. Like finding people like you who is like, this is a person who has a ton of potential, could be phenomenal. Let me work with her and get her what she needs to succeed. And then let her go and be great. And so a great example of building a great network. Yvonne has now this huge network because people like you all over the country have worked with her. So kind of to what Kim was saying, and everyone that she's ever in, it's like, oh, Yvonne's here. Yvonne's here. Yvonne's here. I mean, you hear it constantly when she's out in public because she's trained so many people that's how you kind of leave a legacy. I think, you're doing a lot of education yourself right now, formally. You're finishing your BSN in January. You're going on to an NP. That's a whole legacy all in of itself in the middle of all the things that you're also doing with building a spa. Jessica, are you insane? First of all, have you lost your freaking mind? What the hell are you thinking is my first question. But why now? I mean, thinking about going on stage and all the things you are doing, why is this a time for you to finish that BSN degree and then go on to your NP?
I have this gut feeling that the industry in the future will require a minimum of NP to own your own med spa. We live in California. California is probably one of the hardest states to be in owning a med spa. So, as we know, the industry is getting more regulated. So I just want to prepare. I just want to be ready. When they say, nope, you got to be an NP at minimum to own your own med spa, then I'll have it, right? I don't want to be taken back and have to give up on everything that I've built.
I agree. And I think too, that's why I would do it. I'm very pragmatic as a person, but also I think there is a benefit to learning. I think I've had several friends who finished their MP degree and said, I thought about more clinic strategy, more about how the strategy of the operations, the timing, the scheduling, like the flow of things, maybe not so much like being a better nurse, like medically speaking, but more of like how the operations need to function for us to be successful here in the middle of, a pandemic, triage, chaos, whatever it is. How much of that do you feel like you still want to know? And is that a valuable reason to go back? If there wasn't a rule about NPs, is that enough to say, I'll invest into the education?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Being an NP, you have more autonomy. You're able to, write prescriptions and diagnose, where I can't do that right now. I have to lean on my nurse practitioner that I have in office. It's always a good idea to further your education, whether it's for one reason or another. So yeah, I definitely think that there's many benefits in it other than just, if that's what's required by law.
We can keep the money in-house. That's what I like.
Yeah, because you're having to pay somebody else, right? Whether it's a medical director or another NP on site. I think the law, though, will change. I couldn't agree with you more. I think we're at a place in Texas, at least, where, here, the good faith exams, you guys really built that in California. It was a big California thing. I think the law is changing and you will get left behind. And to see all the work that you've done, all the things that you've built and created over time to just kind of go poof because of a law, it's just, I can't imagine. It's probably like Louisiana had this happen to them. I think you guys kind of have a Louisiana connection, probably with Florida, the whole thing down in our sunshine states, but they got locked out of it. I think a couple other states did as well. It's like, hey, one day the board came in and said, well, if you're not an MP, you can't inject anymore. So if you're an RN, you couldn't even inject. I think that's another big risk that we take is if you're not a prescriptive nurse, if you can't inject at all anymore, it's not just a business. It's like you can't even do what you do for your livelihood. I think it's just such a great risk, but hopefully there's much to be learned as well in the path that you're taking to get better as a nurse and as a business owner. But thinking through like your love for education, do you have any plans at some point to start training more formally and like do it more as like your, not a side gig, but as an addition to your practice and your day-to-day clinic?
Yeah, currently I have my assistant who was attending a local college and she needed a clinical site. And so I signed up as a clinical site at her college. So she was in a medical assisting program. So it's small. It's not, I'm not training injectors, but it's a start. And we do want to launch something for new injectors, whether it's teaching them how to start a business. I know Ken is interested in doing that. And then, just your basic Botox and filler techniques. Yvonne always tells me if you can do something, you can teach it. Doesn't have to be big. I don't have to teach how to inject with cannula or how to inject biostims and jawlines. I can teach the basics.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, right? Jessica had mentioned earlier kind of like, bias trainings in the industry and being associated with kind of some of the big name companies to do the trainings. Her original goal coming into this was to be a trainer, right? That was the original goal. And I feel like as we've learned more and gotten more entrenched in the industry, I don't think that that's changed, but maybe an independent trainer and not attached to a pharmaceutical company.
Well, I think you mentioned the most important part, Jessica. It's so expensive. Like if we could all just go do trainings, it'd be great. But unlike other specialties, we charge for it here. If you're an oncologist, you go to other physicians and train all the time. It's like part of what you do. It's how you grow the field and, the study of whatever it is you're studying. You grow the research body, et cetera. Not here. It's $10,000. The shadow days are $5,000. I mean, I don't care who you are not that special. Like I run a pretty large business here and I would never charge that for a day with me. Like that is absolutely insane. No one's time is that valuable. No one. Because if you're still seeing patients, still seeing, clinic operations, it shocks me to think that it's going to cost me 10 grand to just watch someone walk around all day. Like I just can't justify that. Number one, that's my own personal soapbox. But number two, I think it's a hurt or a disservice to our patients, because if we make it so hard to train, so hard to learn, so hard to get better, then as we have this massive influx of people coming into our industry wanting to get injected, where are they going to go? If no one can afford to go get training, where are they going to go? And I think people say, oh, just save up at your career. Yes, I agree, save up at your career. But at some point, diminishing returns, right? I'm out of money. I have no money and I have no skill. So there is a gap. And I think a person who can do this because they love it and who can afford to charge what it's worth, but not too much, will have a phenomenal following, because people are hungry for that. They're out of money, frankly. They're out of money and they're out of time. They want somebody who can just say, this is how you do it. An affordable cost will get you some great skills and get you on your way out, for the next thing. But I don't know if you guys see that, but I just think the pricing right now is absolutely insane.
Don't want a bunch of new injectors who can't afford training and just have, their training is from YouTube, right? Or just Patreon. Do I have $10,000 in the bank? Yes. Am I going to spend it on 4 hours of training? Absolutely not.
It just has to make sense. I would say the only negative story that I ever experienced in the aesthetic industry, we were at a conference in Utah. It was the MERS conference, not MAAI. And I was at a table with two injectors. Both of them are well known, and they were bragging about how they charge exorbitant training cost to new injectors, just ridiculous. And, one's like, yeah, I don't even let them talk and I don't even talk to them. I charge them X and I make them just stand in the corner and that's it. And if you don't like it, then, oh, well. And I was just like, wow, oh my gosh, like really, if that ever got out that this is your strategy, like, and to that point, and even to this day, everyone that we had met and everyone that I had engaged with in the industry was the complete opposite, very positive, very nice. Like, yes, of course, Needle Daddy has the thing about, this isn't Groupon, and we agree with that 1,000%. You can't do it cheap. You get what you pay for. But to have that elitist mindset and mentality and just look at this as, you know what, here's an avenue where I can price gouge and, charge whatever I want because these people don't know any better. I thought that was just very bad and a potential black eye on the industry. But fortunately, that's like the only time I've ever run across it.
That's horrible, Ken. To even hear that, that's terrible. It's funny. I run a SaaS company. Obviously, we're like low cost because we want scale, right? It's like I want to charge you the least I possibly can to get you in the system because I want lots of you. It's just such a different mentality. But I would have to say, shout out to Injector Ken Jackson here in Dallas. Her shadow days are all hands on, and you are seeing patients all day. You're treating, you're touching. I was fortunate to be her friend. I know a lot about what she does, and I see her days and think that's a real training. Like you walk away having learned techniques versus like I'm in the corner watching you do what you do and like thinking, can I do that? I don't know. Can I touch the syringe or not? Watching is great, but it's not the same as doing. I think at the end of the day, as Scott Callahan always says, you have to have like, hands-on time. You got to have that. It just doesn't, it's not the same. But I would, hopefully those injectors have had some karma maybe in their universe because it's just not a good way to do business. It's terrible. But you're going to do it differently. So Ken, what about the business side of it? I know Jess has the injection side, but how will you help us all learn to build a better business?
Again, we're fortunate. We're in a small town. So I do a little bit of small business consulting on the side here locally, outside of the aesthetic space. Again, I'm super fortunate to have met a lot of cool people on the business side in the industry, in the aesthetics industry. So 2025, you'll probably see more of me on that side of things and helping people grow their business. As of right now, though, I've got a tough boss who wants me focused on the task at hand.
And your own career too. So how do you guys make all that work?
Yeah,
I do. Just timing wise, like Jess, how do you fit in your day being a wife, a mom, a business owner, an injector, a manager to other humans, which is different than being a business owner. Like managing people is just extraordinarily exhausting. Trust me, I know. How do you get all this done and not burn out or just like function with probably very little motivation some days to keep going?
Well, I have to be very intentional with my time. Make sure I'm not just, doodling. But I have a great team behind me, a great support system. As you already know, Ken is a huge part of it. My kids, luckily, they're teenagers, so they're not so needy, but they help out when they can. My employees, my assistant Destiny, she's amazing. She helps me in anything that she sees I need. And then my nurse, Katie, she's great too. So I have a lot of support and I lean on them heavily to get me through the day. So sometimes I may be a little like airheaded or lost or just, all over the place, but it's just part of the game.
One day at a time. And Ken, you have a whole different job, whole different career somewhere else, doing something totally different. You just ran in here for this podcast from your other job. How do you make it all work with very, I'm sure, very competing priorities in the day?
Yeah. Well, I just know that I'm going to be late to everything.
Same.
I accept it. I was late here. Late right now. Back to my regular 9 to 5 job. But how do I prioritize everything? Is I know we only have a short period of time to make money. So for me, I prioritize things based upon what's going to leave the longest lasting impression, right? And what makes the strongest memory. So, again, I'm late right now to work, right? I'll hear it when I get there, but this is a memory. This is a moment. So I'm okay prioritizing this and being 5 to 10 minutes late back to the office simply because, again, anything that I do in that world, it's temporary and candidly, it's just for the money. I'm hoping nobody from my job is going to see this podcast, but it's just for the money. Whereas again, this is life. This is real life. So again, I know and I accept I'm going to be late to everything. And I just prioritize based upon memories and love.
Well, it looks like you guys have done a great job. I mean, I think you had a big anniversary recently. I saw it on an airplane, on Instagram, all kinds of things with diamond rings and such. And you're a great team. You're just a dynamic duo who's really supporting each other first of all, as a couple, but also in your skill set. I think it's just really great to see you're each so good at your own thing coming together. And I have just really enjoyed really learning about both of you all year long and meeting you and having a lot of fun memories with both of you too, that hopefully will continue on into 2025. But I don't want you to be late, Ken. So we're going to wrap up here, but give us an idea of how to find you, Jess, your Instagram handle, and whatever else you want to share with your website. Let us know how to find you.
Yep. So you could find me at DrippyNurseJess on all social media platforms. That's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and website as well.
And Ken, give us yours because yours is also really good.
All I do is repost her stuff. Mine's super simple. Ken Harper social media. I'm only on Instagram. That's it. Before I get out of here, though, Doctor, I do want to say I want to thank you and shout out you specifically. You don't know this, but it was the second conference we ever went to in Charleston, South Carolina. I don't even remember whose conference that was. It was at the Great Gatsby party. You came in like a boss, just doing what you do. And somehow or another, we ended up at a table with you and we were eating. And you were just so kind and started a conversation with us. And you and Yvonne were kind enough to give us your time and answer questions that were troubling us at that point in the journey, and just figuring out, okay, how can we do this? We're trying to figure out financially, like, she's making money, but sinking it into the house, sinking it into the business. And you gave really good advice that we walked away from that dinner and that event believing. Right. And you played a big part in, again, helping us believe that, you know what, we really can do this and we're moving in the right direction. So as many times as we've seen you, I've never got the opportunity to tell you that and say thank you. So that's why I'm always so excited when I see you, and I always yell out, Arkansas, Arkansas, like you played a major role in our journey.
Well, I appreciate that. And you guys are easy to love on. You really are easy people to love on. You're both just so charismatic and fun and exciting to see you at a conference. Like, they're here. Get ready, get our social media fun out. But no, I appreciate that. That's very, very kind. And you guys are crushing it. You're killing it. Please, you don't need my help. You're doing it all by yourself. But it's been an honor to have you both on the podcast today, and just great to connect with you and to see how work really pays off. Like, the hard work is paying off for you. And I can't wait to see what you do next year and the year after. But I'm going to come out and see your new location when you get it built. I'm going to come out for a visit. I want to see all the things you're making out there and how successful you are in this little town that you're just, I'm sure, kicking ass and taking names. So with all that, we'll say goodbye here. It's almost holiday season, so go home and get ready for the holidays. But thanks again for coming on, and I will see you guys hopefully very soon.
Thank you for having us.
You're so welcome. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of For the Record. This podcast is not intended to provide legal or medical advice. It's for entertainment, education, and information purposes only. For more information on this week's guest, or to get started with Aesthetic Record, email us at info@aestheticrecord.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more fresh perspectives on disrupting the status quo and surviving in the aesthetics industry.